Hello and welcome. We're glad you could join us today. We have a great discussion prepared between Michelle Mertens, Director of IT at Hitachi Computer Products, and Andrew Hughes, Principal MOM Analyst at LNS Research. My name is Gordon Benzie, and I'm a Director of Marketing for the DELMIA brand at Dassault Systems, the sponsor of today's webcast. Dassault Systems is a 3D experience company, and we provide businesses and people with virtual universes to imagine sustainable innovations. DELMIA is the Dassault Systems brand that empowers companies to connect the digital and real worlds of manufacturing to plan, execute, and optimize their production processes. Now, on to our presenters. Michelle Mertens has over 20 years of experience in manufacturing, primarily around the implementation and support of ERP and MES systems. Currently, Michelle is leading Hitachi's global MES rollout to facilities across the US, Europe, and Asia. Andrew Hughes has over 30 years of experience in manufacturing as an analyst, as well as in manufacturing IT, sales, and management across a broad spectrum of industries. Prior to LNS, Andrew worked as a research director at Gartner, led the MES team at Aspen Technology, and has had management roles at Philips Electronics, Honeywell, and GEC Marconi. Now it's time to get started. Michelle, why don't you begin by telling our audience about the manufacturing challenges that Hitachi faced?
Okay, good morning. Good morning, Gordon, and thank you, Andrew, for sharing your insight today, and thank you, everybody, for joining. First, a little background about our role. We're Hitachi Computer Products, part of the Hitachi family, and we're actually the manufacturer of storage and servers as part of the Hitachi Data Systems solutions-based platforms. We have facilities in Asia, Europe, and the Americas, and our particular facility is, for the U.S. is based in Norman, Oklahoma. So back in 2012, we had several manufacturing challenges that need to be addressed. In the past, each of the different factories had been autonomous plants. We had common design and common rules, but that did not necessarily equal a common process flow. The maturity of the factories and the expertise, coupled with the changing product and the changing market, it necessitated a true standardization of the manufacturing process. Our inventory management consisted of periodic, global Excel reports or text file exchanges. Therefore, the picture wasn't timely, and it was also subject to local influence due to the differences in processes and data collection methods. So the visibility wasn't always very clear. These local influences also led to challenges when investigating quality matters or reporting. Any request for reporting or analysis had the potential to be misaligned due to the different nature of each of the systems and the related processes. All global inquiries were sourced independently and often not timely when we had an incident that had to be dealt with. Traditionally, our new product introduction would kick off in Japan, and then the other factories would actually lag behind in terms of our actual kickoff for production. We would leverage the feedback and guidance from Japan, but the local factories were then empowered to establish local processes and systems as they deemed appropriate. So now we were seeking a foundation and a strategy that would not only support a collaborative process design, but also foster and encourage the standardization.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks very much for that introduction, and Gordon, thanks for your introduction to myself and to LNS. There's a quick word about this survey result that I'm showing you here. LNS Research carries out a number of different surveys in our various research fields, but each one we prepend a demographic survey and add a few general questions, including a couple we use today. So this is a survey of over, this operational challenges survey has over 4,000 respondents over the last couple of years. And I think it's really interesting, Michelle, how much we see, the commonality between the challenges that you had and the typical challenges across various manufacturing industries. And when we look at different industries, it varies a little bit, but not a great deal. And the lack of collaboration across different departments is the one that always stands out. The information technology department and the people who work in plants, which we often now call operational technology, so you have IT and OT, they come from very different worlds, and the ability of them to work together across different departments, often meets in this manufacturing execution, manufacturing operations space that is the interface between these two worlds, and so not only is it a technical interface, but also it's an interface of people and ideas and the way that they work. And we'll look later on during the day about how that's changing and how this IT and OT convergence is going to be very important in the world. I think that the other challenges that you have of standardization, of having global systems and everything, is something that we're seeing in a great deal of our clients.
So when we were looking to choose our global solution, we had certain criteria aspects that we had to consider. Of course, the market's changing, so we needed a solution that was robust but also responsive. We could not allow ourselves to be system constrained when responding to the needs of our dynamic manufacturing operations. So our strategy was to leverage our global talent both functionally and technically. We had to have a foundation that would support our desire to build and maintain our new system in a fully collaborative multi-plant environment. Prior to official production selection, we actually worked on a proof of concept pilot with our Japan partners for their CTO warehouse. And so we had targeted a common core to serve as the footprint for the standardized processes. But we still needed the flexibility to develop and deploy localizations at each site for functions that were either temporarily or even permanently going to be different. It could be things such as certain printers that are only supported in certain markets, emergencies that arise. We even had challenges with physical plant layouts. One facility, it was 2 separate buildings. Another facility, it was 4 floors. So some processes were going to have to be mildly different, and we needed a system that could accommodate that. Of course, seamless integration was also a critical requirement. This was really the first truly global from-scratch deployment, and we had time and scope management constraints, so we had to be able to talk to all of the other systems that were in place because they were not in scope to be changed at the time. Since those major systems were not going to be changed and all of their functions had to still be in play, nothing could be disrupted. And we also knew we had to move fast. This particular footprint we had laid into the U.S. deployment under a very aggressive but highly visible return on investment. Our global team was tasked to achieve the same great results smoothly and quickly.
Yeah, interesting, Michelle. I think that the thing that I pick up there is the global and local aspect of these things. A lot of MOM vendors in the past have tried to sell this concept of standardization across dozens or hundreds of plants. And the reality is that you probably have to strive for an 80-20 rule. If you can have 80% of your system is common across 80% of your plants, then I think that you're doing well in today's global MOM implementation league table. There are other obvious criteria for selecting MOM solutions, such as functionality and cost, of course. Ease of integration with the existing applications. You also mentioned, Michelle, the ability to integrate into ERP. And I'll talk a little bit later about the difficulties of integrating into ERP in a very standardized way. So, and that also links a little bit into the software delivery model. But I think that, what's important to see from this is that, it's relatively straightforward to set some good selection criteria as long as you have a global view of what you want to do and you aim for that 80% standardization and 20% localization where required.
So, our decision was to implement the DELMIA Apriso solution. Actually, at the U.S. facility back in 2009, we had deployed the Apriso solution, so that did serve as not only a starting point for one of the candidates, but also strongly supported the proof of concept in Japan. So it was decided to use the GMES Foundation in place as the footprint, and then of course all of the lessons learned from not only the proof of concept in Japan, but also the global interaction that was required to start looking at a collaborative environment. What we called the GMES, the Global Manufacturing Execution System project, was formed. The technical foundation was, of course, one aspect to be common, but really the big difference here was the shift in the global and the support group roles to more of a collaborative implementation lifestyle. The engineering, all of the support groups, all of the IT roles, they were very different traditionally in each of the factories, and we needed a foundation and an implementation strategy that would support the alignment of all of the local strength and local talent in order to define and create what we called a new global best practice instead of the local best practice for any given function or process. So we literally convened our best and brightest from each of the sites to contribute to the process and system alignment. We frequently put them face-to-face so we could build a high-performing team. We even branded the project with the logo shown here that represented each of our sites. You know, it was the flags of each of the nations for the 3 initial go-live sites. And we had very strong executive management support, and we tried to make it very, very clear this was not an IT project. This was a global, cross-functional project, company-wide endeavor. So all the sites and all the team members were equal partners. We wanted a fully collaborative environment, and in some sense at some of the other sites, this type of rollout would have traditionally been an IT event. In our case, we brought everybody to the party. So the functional and technical resources, they work together to understand the operational differences of each site and then to determine the new best way to deploy in a common process to each site. So, now we've successfully rolled out the foundation to our factories in the U.S. and France and in Japan, and we continue to enhance and expand the functionality as well as the usage. So in the case of the actual GMES today, it's primarily used to collect traceability and quality details for all stages of the manufacturing process. The implementation and the use of a common foundation, it served as a strong catalyst to support actual standardization progress. It's also pushed us to standardize our terminology and codes, which was huge in order to align reporting as well as any type of analysis. Our business process owners are fully engaged from the beginning of the process, and they're part of the feedback loop throughout the entire design and development. They get to see what we've heard, what we understand from them. They get to see it early and provide their feedback. Our goal is no surprises at go live, and also a highly empowered user community. Also, the visibility is improved due to the common foundation as well as the deployment of the common processes. But the true gain will really be in the subsequent phases as we complete the full rollout company-wide as well as establish our reporting foundation. So we're using what's called a center of excellence. It's a team concept as well as a functional technical background. We knew we needed to centrally manage the implementation, but the COE, Center of Excellence structure, really allows us to support not only the foundation but the processes into the future. It's a management strategy as well as the actual technical code foundation or instance that we use. The actual COE team consists of IT management as well as technical leads from each of the site, and also the business process functional owners for their corresponding disciplines. The team's tasked with monitoring and managing the major changes necessary in the foundation to ensure that our sites stay aligned, not only for the initial go-lives but also in the future. Aspects of our management include the processes necessary for new product introduction, any new functionality that's requested, and also the big challenge of simultaneous upgrade planning. As a manufacturing facility, many of them are running 24/7, so we must be very scientific in how we deploy and time our upgrades. The team reports to a global steering committee that we report to periodically or in the event of any issues that require attention on an as-needed basis.
Thanks very much for that, Michelle. I think it's really interesting that, what Hitachi is doing is really at what I'd call is the forefront of cross-plant collaboration and global collaboration in these projects. We're always asking our clients how they're doing things, and if you look at this slide, it tells us that approaching 70% of those who have implemented MOM are using something beyond plant level. But I would expect the number that has a formal center of excellence to be much, much less than that. But as we move into new architectures for MOM, and as I was mentioning earlier, as IT and OT start to converge, I think that we'll see ever better management of the plant type of projects that allow you to have faster rollouts and increase the corporate level decision making in these systems. Of course, the whole point about these systems is to integrate the plant with the enterprise so that you can make better business decisions. And if you don't do that in a standardized way across your corporation, have lots of different MOM or MES systems, things are going to get very tricky in the enterprise systems. It would be really interesting, now to hear from you, Michelle, about some of the benefits that you think have accrued from the project.
Well, as you say, some of the biggest challenges are from the integration side, as well as aligning all of the business resources coupled with the global aspect and, of course, the technical. But many of the benefits that we achieved were really not truly quantifiable. It was such a change in strategy in terms of how we were going to manage and how we were going to collaborate compared to the years past. But the primary benefits that we experienced included things such as, obviously improved efficiency and the turnaround time for new product introduction. What typically would take at least 4 months in a staggered type of global rollout, not simultaneous, it can now be done within 1 month, all of us working together, all of us essentially going live with production at the same time. The potential also now exists for us to see global results and statistics that are sourced from a common foundation and a common process. So it's more apples to apples, whereas in the past, of course, the title of the report or the statistics may have been the same, but how they were derived could have been very different. Also, a huge part for us by leveraging, the best of class from all sites, both as well as processes and the people. We've been able to streamline our operations and improve the automation on the shop floor. We're able to improve our interfaces because we've developed a standard way to talk to, various ERPs. We've got Oracle, we've got some homegrown, we've got SAP involved, our material consumptions, all of those types of feeds. It's also allowed us to simplify many operations as we look towards standardization, especially coming from very different ways to the different sites. Sometimes we really had to leverage that, let's keep it very basic and then enhance as we continue. So by going to not only a common foundation globally, but also now common between many of our product lines, it's allowed things to be so much cleaner. And we do it once, and then we leverage it for the future. So again, I think in conclusion, in terms of the benefits, we've streamlined our ability to introduce new products, new functions, and even potentially new sites from here on out.
I think that's really fascinating, Michelle, that the benefits, not just financial ones, they're really go deep down into how your company operates, and particularly in terms of the communication between the MES system and the business systems of various ERP and other systems, and also down into the shop floor. The more that people can standardize that in both directions, the more benefit that they're going to be able to drive out of MES solutions, because they are starting to actually get real benefits out of getting better plant systems, better use of first-rate thinking across plants. I think it's really great. Thanks so much for explaining your MES project. And if it's okay with you, I'll take a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about LNS Research's view of MOM today and in the coming years. Because I think it was, this is a fantastic project to see what I would say is sort of state of the implementation art today. But the IT world is changing. This picture here gives a very traditional view of manufacturing operations management to cover the ISA 95 level 3 architecture and functionality. MOM has been around for a long time. You know, some people would say it's been around since the 70s because that's when MRP2 came around. But you know, I would argue that real MOM has probably been around since the late 80s. I installed my first one at a forward-looking food manufacturer in 1988, and done many since. But much has changed over the years, and integration has become much more sophisticated. But also, it has been some of the difficulties of driving business value. Those difficulties, you know, have often been integration rather than functionality driven. When you look at these layers, you know, you very often see, and I'll show later, a sort of hierarchical view of it. But I think there are other ways that are interested to look at it, and one of these is timeliness. What is real time to you? It's very different for a sensor to a corporate planning system, and as you can see on this, we've tried to put sort of times on the various layers, and the different layers of system, software, and hardware reflect different speeds. This picture also shows us on the right-hand side the integration, not so much, you know, what data is going up, but how mature that integration is between layers. And what Michel and Hitachi have been doing have been addressing two of the most difficult areas of integration between level 3 and the business systems and level 4, and between level 3 and level 2, the equipment and process control. Now, level 3 to level 2 in theory should be more straightforward because the type of data being managed is less complex than going up into the business systems. But the problem is that there are still hundreds and hundreds of different protocols out there, and although we're starting to see some standardization around Ethernet-based networks in the plant, you know, there's still a lot of old stuff out there. And I think that when you look at this, the difficulty of this integration, what impresses me about Hitachi is that, you know, strong management and the forcing of standardization across plants, you know, helps a lot here in making these interfaces not just easier to implement, but easier to maintain in the long term. However, I think that opportunities will come to make this easier as we move into a world of the Internet of Things and cloud-based computing. Let me just very quickly show you, you know, I don't want to spend any time just flipping this picture up to sort of look at it in a hierarchical way. You know, what stands out here, you know, again, is this level 3 to level 4 system. Now, we think that we're starting to see a change in this architecture that you see and the previous one. You know, let's take a brief look at it with what we call smart connected assets. What you see here is just a very brief overview of a lot of the work that LNS Research are currently doing, you know, on Internet of Things and manufacturing operations management in a modern IT infrastructure. And what the smart connected assets do is they allow the connectivity fundamentally to change, because systems will be able to talk with devices at level 1 and level 2 directly as the devices become smart and connected, as they have their own communications capabilities and they have their own predefined functionality. That's the definition of smart and the definition of connected, but I said it the wrong way around. It's very important that, you know, customer applications, supplier applications could even talk to these devices. You know, if you have some valves provided by a particular supplier, he might actually offer a maintenance contract along with those valves, which includes actually measuring how they're doing in the plant itself. So there's an awful lot of opportunities here in order to change the way that we communicate in the plant from the level 3 system down in a very fixed hierarchy to being able to access information across all the various different layers. And what you see on the right-hand side in the industrial Internet of Things enabled next generation systems, which is a mouthful which I get wrong all the time, so I just try to call them smart connected business processes. These will be more modular, so that each individual functionality will be able to be delivered by a smart connected business process, which will use a global cloud-based Internet of Things platform that has access to all the information across the enterprise, not just from the plant, but also in all the business systems and so on. what we hope to see in the slightly more distant future is the ability for people to be able to build simple mashups. You're already seeing that in analytics and big data analytics. Companies coming out with easy to use analytics tools, so you don't need a data scientist sitting in the desk next to you in order to make some very interesting analytical discoveries about your manufacturing plant or your business as a whole. And I think that basically what will happen is that these next generation systems are going to actually start to help get rid of some of the problems we saw in integration, in some of the problems we saw in being able to roll out the 80-20 rule. Hopefully the 80-20 rule will become the 85-15 rule, as it becomes easier to modify systems to meet particular requirements. And just to finish off, I've sort of flipped the vertical picture again, and this time I've taken a slightly different scenario where you can imagine that some or all of the level 3 functionality from the MOM systems executes in the cloud, and the cloud enables your customers and your suppliers to be able to link into all your systems to actually get real information and be able to actually run applications using your information to tell them what they're going to do, so customers can change their orders very, very rapidly. They can see what effect that's going to have on their delivery schedule. Suppliers can give information about the quality of a batch of material arriving, for example, before it arrives, so you know what impact that's going to have on your manufacturing time or your manufacturing process. I think what's going to be really interesting, of course, is when you see all this, is the ability to develop mashup applications that can access information from anywhere, carry out analytics that discover unimagined insights into the manufacturing enterprise and beyond to our supplier and customers. This is a dream. We have to keep our feet on the ground. We have to be careful about getting too carried away by the concept of having all MOM functions in the cloud, as some vendors are doing, but usually only for relatively simple, discrete manufacturing processes. Time-critical control and instant access to manufacturing information, such as data historian information, are and will remain the norm in many manufacturing industries. This can often require some MOM functions like production execution and, as I said, historical data collection to remain in the plant and have fast access to controllers at level 2. You might see, I've always imagined, and we see some vendors selling things like data historians in their controllers. You can imagine production execution in a controller like you see in S88 batch programs. I just wanted to give a very quick overview of what we're doing at LNS in our research around the whole manufacturing space. We focus only on manufacturing. We don't look at any other industries, but we cover a lot of different application areas such as asset performance management, quality, EHS, and so on, and of course MOM and the Internet of Things in the manufacturing industries. Let me pass back to Michelle, who's been very patient, to wind up and to make any comments that you would like to about all this, Michelle.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for your insight on the technology shifts. They're going to continue to really kind of challenge and in some cases intimidate us in terms of the technology, but ultimately it's going to enhance our capabilities in manufacturing, and it's so exciting to be a part of this now as we watch all of the potential for these things that we've been constrained in the past, but now the technology is finally catching up to some of our dreams and visions. So as challenging as some of this is going to be in the future, it's very exciting to see what's coming and to be able to be a part of it. So thank you so much for your insight.
Absolutely.
So in conclusion, we were very, very fortunate from the Hitachi side to have very strong executive level support for our project, as well as our strategy, which was a definite shift for us. But we also had an amazing implementation team, across the globe, from the technical side as well as the functional side. Everybody was really all in, and it allowed it to not only be a successful project, but actually be just a very, very good experience for us to achieve the goals that have been set out. Of course, We still have a lot of improvements. Our progress with standardization continues to have to be, improved, and we continue to have to push for those types of things. But it really did bring about a major change in how we managed our factories in the past, and it's been an exciting change and catalyst to watch. With both a strong technical and functional global resource pool, we'll be able to rely on that foundation, that concept for years to come in order to make us able to move quickly, respond to change. The synergy that's been built as a result of the rollout, it's really allowed for a continual improvement type of atmosphere, but also one of the unforeseen benefits has been more of a follow-the-sun type of support. We now have, across Europe, the Americas, as well as Japan, very strong resources, functional resources that are empowered and understand the process, as well as an amazing technical team. In the event of a challenge at one of our sites, when it arises, we can communicate it easily and share the details to the other sites, and then literally leverage their expertise in their business day to work towards a solution. We've had incidents that arrived in one country, and it wasn't lying down, but it was still a pretty intricate challenge. And they come back into work the next morning, and the other sites have been working and collaborating while they were basically asleep. And so it's really been exciting to watch some of these other benefits come to play. So, of course, many of the things may be difficult to quantify, but the GMES Foundation, it provides us with the ability to react quickly to the numerous opportunities that our very dynamic and ever-changing market presents, and, of course, as Andrew mentioned, the ever-changing technologies as well. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. I believe if we have any questions.
Yeah, let me jump in with the first question, Michelle. This is unplanned, of course. And but just as you were talking, it was making me think. Do you see you being able to use your Center of Excellence, for another completely different project, say a global equality project or a global asset management project?
Oh, yes, and actually, the initial collaborative idea behind implementations was something that we'd used in previous implementations locally here in the U.S., like in the case of our ERP or even our previous MES systems. And now looking at the model that we've put out from a global side, we're actually using that same type of model to manage other types of functionality that goes beyond what our MES foundation is. So literally some of the slides that we've been able to put together kind of showing from our steering committee all the way down through the COE in that type of structure and the more engagement of the business process owners coming up, we have been able to leverage that across other global type of projects. So it's very exciting to see what our success has brought about and then to be able to see that evident in other types of things that are going on out there.
Cool. Now let Gordon handle the questions.
All right. Well, that was very interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Michelle, for a great discussion. It looks like Hitachi has achieved some great success so far. And Andrew, if what you forecast to be true, it should be a very exciting future for those of us in the world of MES systems and MOM systems. So at this point, let's turn over the questions to the audience. So far, we have received a few. And let's go from here. So our first one here is, this one's for you, Michelle. Which was your pilot factory, or how was it rolled out to the 3 factories? And was it all simultaneous, or was it sequential? And if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So the initial footprint was put back into our U.S. factory in 2009. That was prior to the global initiative. We were in the process of replacing our current MES. At that time, the factory in Japan was using a purchased product, and then the factory in Europe was using a homegrown solution. So when it came time to select a global product, if you will, obviously ours was one of the candidates, but at that point we worked with the Japan team to pilot just a smaller piece of functionality across the Apriso technology stack as a proof of concept. Once everything started rolling and we truly had the global initiative, we had to realign our local U.S. implementation because, of course, we made a significant amount of changes to go into the global best practice type of structure. And so we were essentially already live with some changes that we refer to as refactorizations. But then we actually brought up one of our major product lines at the European factory first, and then the second product line across the U.S. and the European factory, and then moved on to the Japan factories. So we did not do any type of big bang, if you will. We certainly rolled them out so that we could have the proper staff, both technically and functionally, to support everything.
Great, great. All right, a question for you, Andrew. And I think this was in reference to you talking about the future and the potential realignment of level 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you have any case histories on specific companies that have already done that? And along that line, any anticipated benefits specifically in the heavy chemical industries?
That's interesting. No, we don't have any examples of companies yet that have gone as far as as the last picture that I showed. What we do have is a lot of evidence of companies who are, desperate to dip their toes in the water. And we're getting a lot of requests, and we're seeing a lot of software vendors, both the traditional ones in our manufacturing marketplace, including Dassault, but also newcomers, people who are coming in to try and disrupt the market. And I think particularly you're going to see during 2016, you're going to see examples of companies who are coming out with IoT platforms that are, if you like, industry capable, and that will allow smaller vendors to build applications that are plant focused, but are more specific to a single function rather than a MOM system which covers so many different applications. Mm-hmm. If you look particularly at sort of bulk chemicals or refining type operations where you have a large amount of assets, and the product is a factor of how efficiently you run your assets, I think that the asset performance management is going to become one of the leading applications in industrial IoT systems, because it's very clear that the benefits are huge. The difficulties of managing very large plants, both from a distance point of view and being able to manage and maintain equipment which is out in the plant, immediately lends itself to good internet communication, wireless communication, the ability to predict maintenance, and so on. We have a whole practice run by my colleague Dan Miklovic on asset performance management, and it is a absolutely clear and obvious leader in terms of functionality for the industrial Internet of Things.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Next question is for Michelle. As part of your implementation, there's a question on how did you figure out where to draw the line between what would be done in ERP and what would be done in MES? And in 30-second answer, please.
30-second answer. Well, basically, having worked on several ERP implementations as well in the past, for us, the ERP is where the money is. The MES is where the process is, the quality, and for us, the traceability. So, anything to deal with, anything that's going to source MRP or that's going to source finance, the system of record was going to be the ERP system. The process, quality, and pure traceability, the system of record was going to be the MES. How's that for a quick answer?
That's very impressive.
It's pretty good.
Any comments to add to that, Andrew?
No, I think that's a great way of describing it. I'll remember that. I think that the simple answer, if it's money, it's ERP. If it's process, it's MES. Yeah, great.
Excellent. All right, we got one for you, Michelle, since you did such a good job with that last one. Is there any R&D functionality within this deployment that you've done, and minimum size facilities candidates, if that makes sense?
in terms of the MES, the R&D aspects are not tracked in our MES. We do manufacturing, of course, quality, as well as starting to look at some aspects of customer repair. Our system of record, as well as our research and development foundation, is actually managed in a separate system. So, essentially, I'd say the answer to that question would be no at this time, if I understand it correctly.
Mm-hmm. How about a minimum size for a facility? Do you see that? I mean, you've done 3 now. Do you see that there might be a minimum, or do you think that this could be deployed regardless of size?
Yeah, I think absolutely. The smaller, the easier. Because we're electronics manufacturer and we're doing some pretty high-end solutions, we consider our foundation to be pretty complex. And in working with our counterparts within our industry as well as manufacturing, it's become pretty evident that what we've deployed here is pretty intricate and complex. When we look at some of our product lines that are a lot more basic, and we're able to do more of a modular type of approach, those are able to kind of almost be a plug and play. So, from a certain sense, as a member of the team, those would be the ones that would be the easiest to do. And definitely, from a scalable standpoint, the smaller, the less complex, the easier it is just to plug it out there. So I don't think there really is a minimum.
It sounds logical. And of course, the more plants that are online, the greater value you're getting from the overall investment. So that would support that.
Now, you could also argue, I think, that for a small site, might be a 90-10 site. So the amount of localization is likely to be smaller too, so that the cost of rolling out is contained.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right. Our next question: can you explain the management? And this looks like it would be to you, Michelle. Can you explain the management module implementation? Whether was it for finished goods or for raw materials? And is it for shop floor or the lab?
Okay, so it's basically shop floor. Right now what we have in place is for final assembly, so that's the receipt of raw components and then the build-up, and then also for final test. Because of the electronics aspect, there's a lot of testing that has to occur, which is really work orders flowing through, so those completions in and out of the test, as well as any quality results, are fed through, and then basically our configure to order or the pre-shipping type of aspects. So not really lab, not that high upstream, but final assembly, final test, post-test, and CTO. That's kind of the range of what we have in place, coupled with a pretty broad underlying quality foundation. And all the traceability aspects, the genealogy, and everything else that has to come into play there.
Any comments to add, Andrew, on this, how this reflects to what you're seeing in the overall industry?
No, I think that maps very closely to what we see in what we call complex discrete. I think it's people are trying to use MES systems in labs and so on as well. But that's more in batch, pharmaceuticals batch and so on. So I think we're seeing very much the same.
Great. So I think we might be getting down to our last question here. So thank you, audience, for all your interest and engagement. Appreciate that. So this is were your plant, again, we'll start with Michelle on this one. Were your plants responsible to get the implementation costs included in their budget? Oh, I bet this is a hot one here, huh?
That was kind of tricky. So, well, essentially, the licensing for the individual sites was managed by the local sites. It was a joint type of negotiation, if you will. But the licensing was very easy to segregate that because of the number of users and the facilities. When it came to the actual implementation and the services, we've not been very big on bringing in large third parties to deploy our solutions, primarily because we have to support them when they're gone. And so we really push towards using our local resources as the expertise. So obviously we already had the strength locally in the U.S. We used the proof of concept to train the local staff in Japan initially, and then the global rollout to begin training the local staff in the case of the European site. Now we did augment with resources from our from DELMIA, from Apriso, but we brought them in as equal partners. We brought them in to be, full-blown team members, to serve as a, one of the champions when it came to the COE and the discussion. But we did not really turn the reins over. So those costs, when we did have to augment, were taken care of by the local site. So for example, in the case of the U.S., we brought in one resource. We paid for that resource. In the case of Europe, they brought in, I think, one or two to help augment not only the project but their staff, and then the same thing in the case of France. So there was very few that were truly global resources. We did have several sessions at the very beginning working with DELMIA Apriso in order to how to structure the COE, how to structure the technical foundation as well as the management. So those were shared costs. But as far as any type of implementation support, we really used a staff augmentation model so that we could be self-supporting at the end of it. So it was shared, but it was shared logically based on where those resources were sitting.
Great answer. Well, I hope everyone found this presentation and discussion interesting and worthwhile. I want to thank again Andrew and Michelle for your participation and your time and your efforts and all that went along with that. We really appreciate it. And if anyone has any further questions, or people are listening to this as a recording, you can submit questions. If it's not through the interface, feel free to send an email to me, gordon.benzie@3ds.com, and I'll make sure I forward it and respond back to you. So on that closing note, have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.